I want to move on to our next guest, and he's not someone who is normally a broadcaster. In fact, Rob works in a completely different field in some ways, sort of business, finance analysis. But he wrote a great piece on his blog that he's going to tell us more about. It was published on Bassett Brash Hyde. I read it. I thought that's such a good bloody piece. It nails it so well. And it's now up on the platform with a very catchy headline: New Zealand's mainstream media is deeply manipulative and now wants to overthrow the new government. And this is a theme that many of our contributing columnists, Graham Adams, Ben's done a great piece. But I thought Robert's piece really, really nails it, and in some ways the seriousness of what's going on. So I really wanted to get Rob, who is an economist by trade, I wanted to get him on to chat about, and he's agreed to have a yarn with us this morning. Rob, welcome to the platform. Nice to have you with us.
Hi, good morning.
It's a slightly convoluted headline, but your piece really does nail some examples, and it would seem to me almost of a news media that is either in denial, or you kind of argue more for open revolt, don't you?
Yes. My impression is that the mainstream media, that is the likes of One News and the big outlets like Herald News Hub stuff, don't respect the election result. At some very deep level, they are not respecting the democratic will of the people. They don't believe the present government, the incoming government, is legitimate, that David Seymour and Winston Peters and Luxon really should be there, and they're engaging in a full-blown attempt, not from day one, from day -1, whilst the coalition negotiations were going on, to overthrow the government. So they are in a full-blown revolt. They're mounting a coup in the only way they know how, weaponising words and trying to influence the Kiwi public. It's never happened before in our history. Usually when the people have voted for a new government, there is, around the world, known as the honeymoon period. It can be at least a year or several years where, at least at the start of a term, there is an enormous goodwill shown because the people want the new government to get on with its agenda. That's what they voted for. But the mainstream media, right from the start, showing no goodwill. They don't want the new government to get on with its agenda. They just don't want it. Its lines don't fit in with their narrative, and they want the new government out. So I don't think we've ever seen this in the history of our country.
Rob, I would have to. Well, I've only been around 40 years doing political journalism, but I would tend to agree with you. There might be a chicken and egg argument here. I've got to play devil's advocate. Isn't this all because Winston said they were bribed? Didn't he start this fight?
No, I think the fight's been going on for a long time, and I have very specific examples of it. Leading up to this election in the year before, folks like me were trying to write articles that were critiquing the economic policies of the different parties. I send them in via the university, and usually there's a convention that the mainstream media.
Rob, can I just stop you there, because I don't want people to get the impression you're some crank who sits in his garage writing stuff. Just tell us what you do for a job and what your experience is.
My job is at the University of Auckland. I'm the Matthew Abel Professor of Macroeconomics there. And I'm from this country, but I went to study in England. I did a PhD at Oxford University and worked at then Princeton University, Imperial College London School of Economics.
So you're not a guy in his basement doing his research on the internet. I wanted to clear that up.
No. I've been working as an economist now for 30 or 40 years. My first job was at the Reserve Bank. So I take a very close interest in economics and the economic policies of this country. And I try to write from a non-partisan perspective as well, critiquing National, critiquing Labour, ACT, all the different parties' policies. what I discovered was when I would write articles that were critiquing National or ACT, the mainstream media was so happy to pick them up. The Herald would gladly accept them. When I wrote articles critiquing Labour and the other side, they began to be systematically rejected. And I have a lot of examples of those articles, and the articles that they did accept, the mainstream media started editing the articles and changing the meaning and changing words. This is so
interesting, Rob. I was talking to someone who has just started working from outside from another oppression inside NZME and the Herald, and I had a ginger beer with him last night, and he was saying, OMG, the way that sub-editors use phrases and context that are like in a style guide to basically create a narrative no matter what the facts are in the story.
Exactly. That's what they did to me. Yeah. That was my experience. There was the scandal at Radio New Zealand where they discovered that a journalist was changing Ukraine articles and the Reuters articles, editing them in favour of Russia. Now, when I sort of complained directly to the editor of the Herald, I said, well, at least can I see the changes that you're making? They said no. They would publish the article with their changes, unseen by me, but under my name and with my photo. Yeah, and
Yvonne Van Dongen had this problem when she wrote a piece about free speech at the very start of the platform, which included a long interview with me that she did, and she came back to me before it was published, and she named the young sub-editors or journalists who got hold of it and said, I'm so sorry, they have completely warped what I've written, and they've injected stuff that is clearly designed to damage your reputation and make you look bad. They published it, and I went and complained to them, and they had to publish a retraction because it was just so bent. But, Rob, you're telling everyone who even tries to get published in our mainstream media has been put through this, well, I'm going to call it a lens of wokeness?
Well, I've given up on it, and that's why I do the blog, not really out of choice, but because I had no other choice, that I was unable to send those articles in. So I wrote, for example, I wrote an article critiquing National. They gladly put it in. Then I wrote a follow-up article a year or two ago saying Jacindonomics does not exist, which was that there was really no coherence behind the economic strategy of the Labour government, and that, of course, was rejected. They didn't want to have anything to do with it. So I found there to be a systematic bias there. And as I learned more about journalism, you can see the sort of insidious ways that it works. I mean, recently, just a few days after the government was formed, Brooke Van Velden, the deputy leader of ACT, was questioned about why there wasn't more diversity in the new government, and her comments essentially were saying, "I think the best person should get the job." Now, what's wrong with that? Advocating meritocracy, and
the headline should have read, "Van Velden advocates return to meritocracy."
Yes, exactly. Right. And what was the headline? Van Velden unconcerned about diversity.